How to protect your children. Ephesians 6:4 says, "Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord." There are two sides to raising children. One, there's the negative side, what parents shouldn't do. Parents shouldn't provoke their children to anger. Two, there's the positive side, what parents should do. Parents should bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. Today I want to talk about what parents should do. I want to talk about the positive side of Paul's statement. Now what's interesting is the way that Paul puts it. He says that parents are to bring them up, which is just another way of saying raise them, rear them, nourish them to maturity or adulthood. In other words, the first thing that parents need to do is to realize their responsibility to their children. They're not your property. They are given to you by God for a period of time. And your business is to realize that you have to bring them up. And that means not only for living their life in this world, but especially to have a right relationship to God. Now, that puts a whole different meaning on parenting. And it's tragic when you think of how some parents fail to realize the greatness of being a parent. We're given these children in order that we may bring them up. In other words, teach them in the way that they should go. Mom and Dad, you are the guardian and custodian of that child, that soul. It's interesting how people give so much attention to so many things and so little time and attention and thought to bringing up their children. If people gave as much thought to bringing up their children as they do their careers, their hobbies and sports, and so on, they may not have all the family problems that they have. In their businesses and professions, men and women are well aware of the great responsibilities that they have. They do understand that their decisions have consequences in the lives of those that they manage. But are they aware of the infinitely greater responsibility and consequences they have with respect to their own children? Do they give the same amount of thought and attention to bringing up their children as they do in other areas of life? And shouldn't they devote more to parenting than those other areas of life? The Apostle Paul urges us to regard parenting as the greatest business in our life. If you'll notice, Paul says, bring them up in the discipline and instruction, and then he adds, of the Lord. Bringing them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord is uniquely Christian. The duty of all parents is to bring up and discipline and instruct their children. But the duty of a Christian parent is entirely different. The Christian parent's obligation is not primarily to bring up their children in terms of morality and manners and good behavior. Now, of course, that's certainly part of it. But Paul says children and their parents should, parents should bring up their children in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. Of the Lord is particular and specific, as I said, to Christian parenting. In the mind of a Christian parent is the thought that their child is being brought up in the knowledge of the Lord and to know Jesus Christ as their Savior. The Bible speaks about training and teaching children. Take, for example, Deuteronomy chapter 6. The children of Israel are about to enter the promised land. Moses reminds them that God gave them his law to instruct them on how they are to live their lives. Among other things, Moses tells them, teach their children these laws of God. Tell your children it's not just enough to know these laws. but they must know it and obey it. In other words, Moses is telling the parents that they must pass on their knowledge of God to their children. The children must be taught. Your children must be taught. Bringing up children in the discipline and instruction of the Lord is something which is to be done in the home and by the parents. The emphasis throughout the Bible is that the primary and essential duty of parents is raising their children in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. And I emphasize that because we're all aware of what's been happening over the years. More and more parents have handed over their responsibility to schools, babysitters, and daycare centers. There's no more important influence in the life of a child than the influence of the home. The home is the fundamental unit of society. Children are born into a home, into a family, and that should be the chief influence in their lives. Take your children to church. Supplement the teachings that they hear at church. Teach them how to apply the teachings that they hear at church. What they receive at church needs to be explained and applied. That's where parents play their part. Let me close by asking Christian parents the question: have you given serious thought to this matter? You face a tremendous task, as all parents. Think about what children are being taught in some schools today. That evolution is true. It's a fact. Critical race theory, homosexuality, transgenderism, and a hatred of the founding of our country. The whole emphasis is anti-God, anti-Bible, anti-truth. Who's going to counter these trends? Parents. That's precisely the business of parents. Bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. Now that's going to take time and a lot of effort on your part. But parents need to understand the powerful forces behind those that want to indoctrinate your children. Thank you for watching.